People assume real change comes with a soundtrack, a dramatic scene, a final word, a decision sharp enough to split a life into before and after. But that's rarely how it works. The changes that matter most don't knock. They slip in through the side door and settle before you notice they've arrived. For most of my life, I thought I had myself figured out. Not because every question was answered, but because I'd walked every hallway in my own mind enough times to know where they led. That wasn't isolation. It was architecture. And architecture gives you a floor that doesn't move, so I built on it, not by pushing people away, but by staying just far enough that nothing could shift my foundation. Conversations came and went the way I expected. People took whatever version of me made sense from their angle and carried it home. I never corrected the picture. Eventually, I stopped expecting to be fully understood, and life got quieter. There's real peace in that, until something interrupts it. Not loudly. Precisely, some people enter your life through a single conversation. Others arrive because circumstance keeps placing you in the same rooms. But every so often, someone shows up with no traceable entry point. No opening scene, just a slow recognition that they've become part of how your mind moves through the day. At first you assume it will fade. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't, and instead of fading, it grows quieter and more woven in, which is exactly why you don't catch it until it's already happened. Then one day you notice you're seeing the same world from a different angle. Not because your belief shifted, but because your perception widened. Nothing outside you has changed. Same streets, same routines. But something underneath has moved. The way a song you've heard 1,000 times suddenly reveals a layer you'd never caught. The song hasn't changed. Your ears have. I tried to explain it with logic. Maybe it was timing. Maybe a more reflective season of life. Every explanation sounded reasonable, and none felt true. Explanations describe what happened. They don't explain what it did to you. And once something changes you, old explanations stop fitting. That's what unsettled me. Not confusion, but transformation itself. It quietly interrogates everything you assumed was permanent. You notice how many convictions were really just habits repeated long enough to feel like truth. How many walls you built and forgot the reason for. We rarely question what once protected us. Protection disguises itself as identity until you mistake the wall for the person behind it. Maybe that's why change feels uncomfortable. Not because something new is arriving, but because something old is quietly leaving without asking. We celebrate beginnings and grieve endings, but almost no one notices the adjustments happening in between. The thought that rearranges your priorities. The conversation that tilts your perspective 2 degrees. None of it asks to be noticed. It just keeps shaping you until one morning you're responding to your own life differently than you used to. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. Awareness doesn't reverse. You can bury it under distraction, but it stays underneath everything, waiting for the moment you stop running from what you already know. I used to think clarity arrived all at once. Now I think it's built in pieces, almost invisibly, through observation rather than certainty. That's why silence matters. People underestimate it because nothing seems to happen inside it. But silence is where the mind actually sorts itself out. Words tell you who someone was a few seconds ago. Silence tells you who they're becoming. There's a kind of understanding that doesn't come from agreement. It comes from recognition. Recognition doesn't ask for proof. It just exists, quiet and steady, and once you've felt it, nothing else replaces it. That kind of recognition rewires how you listen. You stop waiting for impressive words and start noticing the pause before someone speaks, the space between two ideas. Everyone carries a version of themselves built for public use. Underneath it is another version, holding the unanswered questions. Most relationships never reach that layer, not because people are dishonest, but because that kind of exposure needs a safety that takes time to build. Trust isn't made from promises. It's made from repetition, a conversation someone actually remembered, a silence respected instead of filled, a boundary left alone simply because it could have been crossed and wasn't. People don't change each other through grand gestures. They change each other through showing up, not constantly, but reliably. Anyone can be present for the extraordinary. Very few stay steady through the ordinary, and it's the ordinary days that reveal who someone actually is. Looking back, I don't think the real question was ever whether change would happen. It always does. The question was whether I'd notice it while it was happening, or only recognize it afterward. Once it had already become part of who I was, the world doesn't get bigger. Your attention does. Two people can sit in the same room and leave with entirely different versions of what happened. Neither is wrong. They're filtering it through different histories. Understanding was never about finding people who agree with you. It's learning to see the architecture behind someone's thinking instead of just their conclusions. The older I get, the less I care about being right, and the more I want to understand. Being right ends conversations. Understanding keeps them alive. People are always larger than the explanations we give them. We forget that constantly, because explanations feel finished. Reality almost never is. The hardest conversations we ever have aren't with other people. They're with the versions of ourselves we've carried too long. Identities that once kept us safe and now just keep us small. Letting go doesn't feel like losing yourself. It feels like making room. That process doesn't end, and it shouldn't. The moment you decide you've become the final version of yourself is the moment you stop listening. And the moment you stop listening is the moment you stop becoming anything at all.